Hello, good evening. Welcome to Talkin Kop. It's me, Chris Brack, and I'm here again with Ashley and Kev. And we're all going to talk about Kerkez because he's finally signed. Kev, who knew Kerkez signed? It's the most well kept secret. You didn't even know he was keen.
Didn't even have a clue. I mean, it just came as a bolt out of the blue, shocked the football world. It was just like, bam, 12 o'clock came, and I was watching TikTok, and then all of a sudden, breaking news, Milos Kerkez is signed for Liverpool. I was like, wow, didn't see that one coming. We've already got two left backs. What do we need a third one for? Mad stuff altogether. Absolute crazy scenes. But what are you going to do? You know, we've got one of the best young left backs in the Premier League, if not the best, and one of the top potentially top left backs in world football for £40 million plus £5 million in add-ons, which he will absolutely hit. What a signing! What a window so far for Liverpool. Absolutely knocking it out of the park, smashing stuff.
Ashley, do you reckon he brought his own kit? I don't think he had to give a bucket. He's had his own kit ready.
I bet you he bought one like at least 2 months ago. At least 2 months.
Yeah, he's got Kerkez. He's got Kerkez in the back already. He's going, just tell me the number. I'll get the number printed later, lads. Don't worry.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he had like Kerkez footy pajamas printed up in like the Liverpool logo. It's really fun to see someone that's that excited about joining. I watched his interview with the LFC kind of video team, and he was like a kid at Christmas. Like, he was talking about his father, who's his agent, and he was talking about how he was asking his father every single day, like, is it done yet? Is it done yet? And it's just so nice. You forget how young he is. Like, he's only 21, and you could hear it when he was talking, when he was speaking about his dad and when he was speaking about his excitement. And you could tell with social media how he really could not keep a lid on his excitement. And, I think everyone sort of described this as like the worst kept secret in football. And it really has been. And I hope that probably in the future he gets a handle on his social media. But yeah, it's just fun for now to just see someone that's so desperate to want to play for this club, which is kind of a nice departure from, certain fullbacks that have left.
Yeah. Do you know the sole thing for me is that he's the same age as my youngest child.
Oh, gosh.
That is just destroyed every fiber of my being.
I know, it's getting to that age now.
I think I read that he was 12 years old when Klopp took charge, which was crazy. Yeah, and he was talking about how that was sort of when he started watching football seriously. And I think we forget kind of what some of these, I want to call them young kids, have kind of grown up on. They've grown up on a different kind of Liverpool.
You know what? That's a really, really important point, because I was listening to something earlier on, and I found myself. I was asked, actually, it was Dylan in the Telegram chat asked a great question earlier on. And
sure?
Yeah. No, he did. He asked if this was the best transfer window that Liverpool have had since the 87-88 season. And I said to Dylan, look, potentially, it has the potential to be that. You'll know in 2 or 3 years. You'll be able to look back, hopefully, God willing, in 2 or 3 years' time at this transfer window and go, do you know what? Do you remember when we went ham at the start of the transfer window and we went bang, 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 and we signed all these great young talents? And my God, look at them now. Because the scary thing is we've signed two 24-year-olds, a 22-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a fresh young goalkeeper that nobody knows anything about, but is listed as one of the top 50 young boys of Europe. And for that to come in for 1.5 million and under everyone's radar, you sat there and you're like, wow, and this is just, we're not even in July. It's mental what the club has done so far this window. Absolutely mental. And to answer Dylan's question, it's like, yeah, potentially this could be one of those standout summer transfer windows that you can look back in years to come and go, wow, that was transformative.
The only other two I could think of, off the top of my head, that are transformed in different ways is the summer we got Alisson, Fabinho, was it Keita and Shaqiri all came in one summer? On top of Van Dijk. And because I'm old, Kev, probably the 2000-2001 summer, where we'd already bought Haman, but then we added the likes of Iqbalbi and people like that, and that probably gives a core, because our core of that squad became 2005's Champions League winning squad, which got Liverpool. I think I wrote an article about it. That's the Liverpool game series, all of it out of the 19. So they're the only two I can think of, but this is a different level because this is while you're at the top.
Yeah, your mic is a bit hit and miss, Chris, for some reason.
It's not bad.
You're there.
This is different now though because this is both of those seasons were to get to the top. This is the first probably big one where we're at the top and have kicked on a level because last time we won the league, we did add quality to it, but it was in that whole COVID period. Everything was all a bit weird back then, so you were never going to go big where you straight into COVID seasons because no one knew what the finance like. But Ash, you've got to be honest. Let's give the club credit. We needed a new right back because our other one left, and we got our first choice. We wanted to upgrade on left back. I do think the talk of Robertson's decline has been a bit over exaggerated in terms of is he on the decline? Yes. Is he as bad as people make it out? No, I don't think he is. But we needed a new starting left back. Got our first choice, and then out of nowhere we've got arguably the best available attacking player brought in the summer.
And I don't think it's random. No. I don't think this is sort of like, oh no, we're panicking, we need someone at the last minute. This seems like it's been carefully studied, and we talk about Hughes kind of taking this year and really doing his due diligence. But if you read some of the reports, they're talking about the scouting on Milos Kerkez going all the way back to his time at Milan, back to when he was, 18 or 19 years old, if not younger. It seems like they've really kind of looked at him long term. I think a lot of people kind of picked him out as like a Robertson successor quite early on in his career. He's only 21, so his career is still
to give him his flowers. To be fair, Kev was the first person who mentioned him to me. It was just before he signed for Bournemouth. Said this guy looks good. He's Bournemouth signed. You should keep an eye on him.
Yeah, he's my birthday buddy. We share the same birthday.
We don't need to talk about how far away the birthdays are, but
yeah.
Shots fired.
Ouch!
Sorry.
And you're the nice one.
That hurt.
I'm sorry.
Hurt me. But yeah. No. I can remember the first time I saw him in the Premier League because I'd seen him. I don't know where I'd seen him. I'd seen him in something before, but I remember the first time I saw him, I was like. It was in fairness, I was watching Bournemouth because of Semenyo, and he stood out like a sore thumb. Kerkez was just bombing up and down. I was like, damn, that's what Robertson, that's a young Andy Robertson, up and down. Well, not the young Andy Robertson so much, actually young Albi Moreno, when we first signed him, bombing up and down the line. But you could tell, really raw, but you could tell there's quality there. And as he evolved at Bournemouth, he evolved his game. His crossing, his passing, his positional play. I think defensively there's definitely work to do, but he's actually, he's physically a decent size. He's a specimen of a young man. He's pretty ripped when he took his shirt off. That one you can see in the goal that he scored against Newcastle. He's chiseled out pretty well, but he's 6 foot as well. So he's not a shrinking violet of a fullback.
Is he 6 foot? I feel like I saw that he was like 5'9".
Well, 1.8 meters.
Okay.
He's 1.8 meters, so he's just a shade under 6 foot. And the way he wears his hair, that's like, he's 6 foot. But yeah, no, I just think the sky's the limit for him. He can be anything that he wants to be. And I think he's at a club where I cannot wait for preseason because we've got 2 flying fullbacks now that are going to either tuck inside and be that left forward, right forward positions that Slot was using Robertson and Tsimikas in last year, and Connor Bradley makes those inverted runs as well. Or they're going to tuck the left mid and right mid in as supporting strikers and let the fullbacks have full reign up and down the width.
Which we used to do with Klopp, didn't we, years ago, to be fair.
Either or are possible. And by the looks of everything that you've seen from both fullbacks, they've both got good intelligence. Spatial awareness, positionally, they know where to be when they need to be there. And Kerkez doesn't get injured. he plays all the time, and he's got a great engine. That Newcastle goal that he scored really late, and it wasn't from
He
being
looked
the right
knackered,
place
didn't
at the right time. Yeah, but he kept going, and he kept,
Yeah.
and, you know, he had a great engine on him. So, you know, I'm really, really excited at the potential with the two fullbacks that we've signed, because I would love to see two absolute flyers on the wing.
The good the good thing about, I mean, we'll talk about our other left back options. It looks, Ash, like Andy Robson's staying, because I think it's been announced. I think Atletico Madrid are going to sign one of Inter's wing backs, and I agree with Kev in the terms of Kerkez has an engine. You know, we've seen that, but at 21, he hasn't done League Europe 3 games a week, and we've seen with players who have done that. That does take a bit of getting used to. So I think having an Andy Robson around for a year is going to be handy, because I think just for him to get not. I don't think it's a physical thing; it's the mental. You know, go, no real training, go. I think that does take getting used to. We've seen that with young players before. You can ride that mental for a little bit, but you know, you've got to sort of pull them out every now and again just to give them a little break.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is really kind of settled with Robertson. I think, what's his name? Ruggieri, I think, is the guy that they're signing. You know, it seems like that hole has been filled at that particular club. I'm not 100% sure if Robertson still kind of looks to explore his options elsewhere. I don't think we need three senior left backs, especially if they're all taking up foreign spots in the squad list. So it's probably something that we are going to have to address, whether that's with Simicast. I'm not sure. I think that you're right in terms of having Robertson close by to sort of bed him in. That being said, he did play, I think, almost every single game in Bournemouth. I can't recall the exact number. I don't know if he took like a game or two off, but he pretty much played the entire season.
I think the only game he missed was that red card against Wolves,
Okay.
the Cunha nonsense one where he got sent off for being slapped in the face.
No, he played 38 games last season. He played 41 in total.
Okay.
3 in the FA Cup. So yeah,
so he's definitely got an engine on him. I'm not super worried about the fitness. I'm more worried about, acclimating to Slot's system, figuring out exactly, what he wants. He seems like he's a very intelligent footballer. It seems like all of the coaches that have talked about him sort of call him a little bit of a crazy left back, but someone that picks up on tactics pretty quickly. He is, I think it was Pete that threw in there, he's very good at underlapping and overlapping runs, almost double as efficient as Robertson is. So we saw that a lot with Gakpo, that overlapping run where I think, Kev, you were the one that was like, what's the point of Robertson being there? I think Kerkez could take that role and really make it his own, and he actually has end product at the end of it. So there's definitely a lot to work with there. I think having Robertson sort of just to hold his hand through this last season of his contract would only be beneficial for everybody, because I think Simicast is sort of topped out at where his performance is. And whether or not he's happy to stay and perform that role is sort of non-consequential when it comes to what the team wants to evolve into, and if it's best for him to go.
There's been an interview with Simicast where he's pretty much intimated he's happy to be a part of a machine and play 20 games a season and be. He said, "What's this?" Quote along the lines of, "I'd rather play 20 games and win something at Liverpool than play 40 games and not enjoy it." Which you can take that either way. You can be happy with it because you go, well, that's someone who's content with their position, a bit like an Endo. But then you also think, you probably want someone who's going to push you a little bit. Maybe that's just his way of saying, I want to stay. But maybe the club may have different ideas. Kev, I mean, talking about other areas of the pitch, we'll come to outgoings in a minute. But looking at the centre back situation, the Mark Guehi rumours are still around. Various people got different opinions of him. He's not as tall as Konate. He's not as dominant in the air as Konate. But one thing he is probably that Konate isn't. I would argue he's better on the ball. Something that Konate has improved on. Don't get me wrong. But if you looked at Liverpool's main back four last year, if you were doing a low block, you want to give Liverpool the ball. Out of our 4 defenders, Konate would be the first choice you give the ball to, because Van Dijk and Trent could have hurt you, and Robson still can hurt you, not the same level. And maybe we did see last year when Liverpool were really pushing for a goal, or as an equaliser or a winner, Konate would get whipped off and we play Gravenberch as a centre back, where they're going, look, in this game, we're not really going to face anything aerially. We just need to have the ball a bit more so people use the ball better. So maybe with Aguehi, they're thinking, well, he can use the ball better, but also if we have two fullbacks to bomb on, if we allow Gravenberch to drop back and always make it at times a back three, Aguehi's quite comfortable wherever we put him, left or right, because he's comfortable in both sides, having played wide in a back three.
I honestly look at Mark Guehi and I say, I don't know, and I don't think he's going to be one to come in and go, okay, I'm first choice behind these two. He won't wear it. He won't have it. And nor should he. I think he's a better footballer than Ibn Konate. I think Konate is much better in the air, stronger, probably more physically dominant, arguably quicker, but then Palace never really played with a high line, so we don't really know. The only thing you can go off is when he played for England, especially at the Euros, he was brilliant, easily England's best centre back, and he stood out in that tournament. So, look, I think I've on record as saying he's an absolute no-brainer. But the idea that you can, I think it's a great bit of business that you could potentially sell Gerard Kwanzaa, who's having an outstanding Euros, by the way. But I think I was trying to make this point in the Telegram app earlier on, and it was a discussion that I heard elsewhere, and it was about how a club like Liverpool, who are going to be challenging for titles, it's virtually impossible for a club like that, for a club like us, to take a centre back from the youth ranks, and develop them and compete on four fronts, unless they're seriously special. So I think this transfer has a potential to be a win-win for everybody. We've got a good fee for him now. He goes to Bayer Leverkusen for a guaranteed 2 seasons minimum. We can't go back in for him until after the next World Cup. So if he develops like we all hope that he does, we can go back in and get it. If we deem he's good enough, we're basically going to be paying 30 million for Leverkusen to develop him into the player that we need when he's 25 and has another 5 years to go, and maybe 6, 7 years to go in his senior career. And people will look at it backwards and say, that's, we're selling it, we're selling him, we're bringing him back. What's the point? The point is we can't develop him into what we need, whereas Leverkusen can. And if they get it right and we go back in for him, that means we deem he's good enough to come in and start. Then you're going to buy a centre-back who's going to cost you the bones of 5 million a year over 5 years, 6 years. And he's homegrown, club grown. I just see that as pure win-win. And you could potentially be bringing in Mark Guehi for similar money, who's a better centre-back now. And you still got Konate and Van Dijk there as well.
What you basically said is you're buying Mark Guehi now, and what you basically said is the hope is in 2 years' time, Kwanzaa is the Mark Guehi now, because Mark Guehi's had 3 years' experience playing at Palace, which has got him in the England squad, which had Chelsea sniff around trying to buy him back, so
yeah.
It's one of those things. I think when you're chasing top four, you can afford to throw a few more youngsters in and take a few more risks because it's about getting to a certain level. I think when you're at the top, it's more difficult in the spine of a team to throw a youngster in. It does happen.
Yeah.
City did it with Foden, but I think it's easier to throw youngsters in at fullback and in attacking positions because there's more cover and development. Centre backs and goalkeeper are brutal. One mistake and it's nearly always a goal, and the headlines are on you. That's why those sort of positions always mature later. So
yeah.
The other sort of conversation that will come around is Ibu is apparently all set for a new change of scenery, according to some French journalist whose name I cannot remember, who's also the same French journalist who told us that Salah was guaranteed to go to PSG and Wirtz was guaranteed to go to Bayern Munich. So we'll see. Ash, how do you see it? I mean, some of our fan base are saying sell him if he's not committed, get him gone. But I'm like, but we saw with Van Dijk and Salah, those negotiations went deep into March, and it wasn't because, and so I think someone trying to paint a picture that he was asking for ridiculous. Nobody knew what he was asking for, and we saw with Van Dijk and Salah, and they kept coming out with stuff saying, "No, nothing's agreed. We're miles apart. We're miles apart." It's, not every situation is going to be Trent 2.0. It could just be another Salah Van Dijk situation, which it does get sorted just a bit later than we all think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing with Konate is that he came out and spoke about this less than 4 weeks ago, and he basically said the stuff in the media is BS. Don't listen to it. And so for me, I'm going to take that at face value until I hear otherwise. There's always going to be noise, especially since the Trent thing is sort of top of mind at the moment. It is a real concern. I'm not, dismissing the fact that losing him on a free would be awful. But until we kind of get clarification on that, I think, seems like he's kind of been busy recently. There's some stuff going on at the club, in case you haven't noticed. There's ins and outs and, people that are coming in and big money that's going out. So Ibu's contract might not be the thing that's, at the top of his stack of to-do list. But that being said, I mean, I do think that it's something that they're going to try to address. I don't think they want Konate to go away. I don't think they, want him to go away on a free. I don't think that they are trying to lowball him. I mean, we forget a lot of times that our club is second only to Man City in this league in terms of wages. I know a lot of us go online and we're like, oh, well, what are they getting paid? And we see kind of their base salary. That base salary is so kind of rudimentary. And then all of the bonuses that are on top of it, they are getting paid so well. I think we're in the top 5, maybe the top 8, depending on, the way that things have shifted over the course of this past year. But we really do pay our players very well. We are not going to lowball Konate. I think, his base salary is something around 80,000 a week right now, but it's going to be more than that. I think he's probably worth around 200, depending on, what you think. I think the issue with Konate was last year a fluke in terms of injuries and his availability or not, because, historically he has not been available all the time. And are you going to pay a Saliba kind of level of money for someone that may or may not be available? I don't know. So that's the question that we need to address. But I do think that, we've already lost Kwanzaa. There's a void there. I think getting Guehi in is a no-brainer for me. I think everything that Kev said is correct with watching Kwanzaa develop in a place that he actually has space to develop and has space for game time. But yeah, it's an interesting kind of quandary. And I think that we're kind of getting to that point in the season in signings and whatnot, where now we kind of get into the nitty-gritty. It's like we need to see players out the door, and maybe we need to see these contracts sorted out.
Yeah, we physically do need players out the door because we've actually got too many non-homegrown players, which everyone on social media will tell you. I guarantee you, Richard Hughes knows it's literally his job, so I won't worry about it. There will be people getting kicked out the door. The other interesting one to talk about is Luis Diaz. As the rumours of this has come back out again, is that he's not happy. Liverpool might win, sell him again. This could be usual press talk. To me, has a smack of Gino Wijnaldum, which is Liverpool have gone, we've got you on a good contract, 2 years left, rumoured to be on around the 100k a week mark. Suits us, you can leave when you're 30, and we're quite happy unless someone pays us silly money. We'll leave it there. It feels like for Diaz, all the powers in the club's hands, where they're almost like, if we don't get this figure, we're happy to keep you on your same wage for the next 2 years, and you can go when you're 30.
Yeah, look, I'm looking. Go back to the Ibu stuff for a second because I'll come to Diaz in a minute. Diaz was making a point there. Apparently, Ibu is unhappy with the incentive structure of the deal. That's his prerogative, as far as I'm concerned. Ibu was signed on 37 million, I think, and he's on a relatively low wage for someone of his stature. But if he decides he wants to follow Trent and go on a free, which I think more players are going to start doing, I just think more players are still going to start doing. I think clubs are going to look at this and go, okay, we're going to sign him for this much. We're going to pay him that much. And we've got him for 5 years. Fine. And just leave it at that. Unless you can get someone who's as good for similar money to what you're going to be selling him for, then it's a problem to deal with next year. The thing is, he's going to want to go to the World Cup with France next year. He's not going to down tools, so he's going to play professional. He's a professional player. He's going to play as good as he can to make sure he's in that France squad, because if it's one position where France are absolutely stacked in, is centre back. If he wants to be on the plane to the World Cup next year, he's going to need to be playing very, very well for Liverpool to get into Deschamps' squad. So, and if he goes on a free at the end of that, fine. You know, he owes us nothing, same as Trent does. Trent was. He leaves on a free, fine. We deal with that next year. Right now, it's the club are going to make an offer, the same as they did with Salah and the same as they did with Van Dijk. If he doesn't want to take the offer, that's his choice. You know, we can't. You can't force someone to sign it. We're not going to certainly overpay in wages. If he wants to stay, he'll stay. If he doesn't, he doesn't. We just got to get used to that. On the Diaz one, it's very similar. Very, very, very similar. The club are in a pretty strong position, unless you get stupid money, which means you're going to have to take that stupid money and then go and pay more stupid money to replace him. You know what you've got with Diaz. You've got versatility. You've got pace. Last season, he showed you he's got goals. And you're adding a playmaker to play in that midfield who will be able to thread him through the eye of a needle. I can see people won't like it. Diaz used as a 9, so false 9 to link up with Florian Wirtz a lot. I think if you can get that kind of a link up to work with Diaz's ability to dribble and his pace, he's top quality and he's ours. Why would you need to go shopping when you already got steak right there? And I think I don't think the offer. I don't think the offer is out there to convince us to sell Luis Diaz in this window, because I don't think there's a better replacement for what he can offer you. Someone who can play left wing and through the middle, unless you're looking at someone younger, which is a huge gamble. You know, you already know what you've got with him. You know what you're going to get with him, and you know you can depend on it. He's another one of these players as well. Rarely gets injured. You know what I mean? Luis Diaz is a bit of a machine when he gets going.
Yeah,
I'd be quite happy to keep him, and if he wants to let his contract run down, fine. That's up to him. Yeah. But I hope it is, and I hope we give him a decent deal. To be fair.
Yeah. Speaking of a person who we think will be leaving, which I think after last night, it definitely caused a bit of a debate in our Telegram group. Is young Harvey Elliott. I mean, you can't help but like the lad. You know, he loves the club. He loves playing for Liverpool. You know, he's had his minutes halved, probably more this season. But he's got away. He's had a really good Euros and 2 big goals, Ash, for England, especially the second one. You know, just after England conceded the equaliser, he gets a late goal. It's the goal we've seen Elliott score, which is that dribble ability that he has. You know, and he's always had a good shot. Always had a good shot at him, and that's where you look and going, yeah, do you know what? If he gets more game time, you know we could do that. But they even said in the commentary, yeah, but if that's Liverpool playing, he's not on the pitch. I said, and unfortunately for him, he's at the moment the perfect first or second sub, and it just feels like for him, I think he'll look for the move because I think he needs more game time. From a Liverpool perspective, if he stays, great, that's a great option. But I think realistically for his development, it feels like he needs to. We probably need like a Kwanzaa-esque deal for him as well, almost like whether you can get another Kwanzaa deal for him, which is move him on, but with an option to come back and see what he's like in 2 years' time.
Yeah, he's a bit of a conundrum. He's one of those players that everyone loves, and especially because he's such a diehard fan, and because he wears that on his sleeve. I think the thing with him is just it's just where does he fit and where does he get the game time? And we did talk about this. I mean, we talked about this a little bit with Kwanzaa, where it's Slot doesn't necessarily have the luxury right now to develop these players with what he's going for. You know, at any other level, if he was at Feyenoord still, for example, you know, Kwanzaa and Elliott would not be going. You know, take away the disconnect between the two leagues and the difference in the quality. But if he had a Kwanzaa-esque or Elliott-esque player, that fit into the Dutch league, he wouldn't be letting them go. The only reason why these players are going is because we don't have the game time to give them where there isn't things on the line all the time. And we saw that this year with, the FA Cup games where Slot was trying to give players a chance and they just didn't seize the opportunity. And it was so high stakes that we ended up, failing to teams that we really shouldn't have failed to. With Elliott, I think I'd be happy if he stayed, but I think for him and his development and his career, it's like, is that best for him? And with him, I care so much about him doing well that I don't want to see him, sitting on the bench. I don't want to see him going to a step down. I want to see him succeeding, and he's good enough to do that. I just don't think that he's world class in his position. And I think that if you look at Wirtz, he is world class, and it's hard because Slot's like, we only have so many areas where we can upgrade. And unfortunately, Elliott is one of those areas where, because of his youth and his inexperience and maybe his lack of pace, that you can upgrade. And Wirtz is an upgrade, and he's younger. And it sucks because I really love Harvey Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, Kev, I suppose with Harvey Elliott, it's like most things, probably like Gonzalo, if he's probably had the game that he's about 2 years older, you know your game better, you know what you can do, and also the lack of pace. Clever players, which I think he is a clever player, they find ways of almost hiding that weakness and accentuating other positives. That's what good players do. Juan Mata was never the quickest player, but by the time he got to Chelsea, because he had enough games as well, his lack of pace didn't really matter because he knew how to hide it. I always use the example of different positions. Sami Hyypiä was one of the slowest defenders you'll see. Very rarely got done for pace because he knew how to position himself in a way that you go away with it. And I think that's what Elliott. That's why I think with Elliott, if he had 2 years playing regular football somewhere else, those little kinks in his game, he'd iron them out. And I actually think his quality is fantastic.
Look, there's no doubt in his quality, and what you're seeing at the under-21s is a Harvey Elliott who's central to England, who's playing every game, and who's playing a key important part in every game, and the responsibility he gets when he's the vice captain as well. He's taken all of that on his shoulders, and he's excelled. So, and I don't think there's any doubting his quality, because not last season, but the season before, even before his injury, he was in the team, and you were sat there like, he's only a kid, but he's there on merit, and you didn't worry when Klopp named him in the starting 11. He was playing right side of a midfield three. You had no problem with it. He was absolutely fine. He needs a run of games, and that's the thing. What do you do? I don't know if the club do a very similar thing what they've done with Kwanzaa. Try to structure a deal in a way that 2 years down the line, you can have a first bite of the cherry to maybe bring him back. You look at Cole Palmer at Chelsea, same thing. Was never going to develop at Man City and needed to move, got the move, and has kicked on at Chelsea, done really well. Phil Foden is another player who plays. He's not quick. Phil Foden is quick, similar to Harvey Elliott. He's quick enough if you surround him with players with pace. If he stays at Liverpool and he's like, okay, we get rid of Chiesa and he's the backup to Mo, and he's your versatile player who can come in on 70 minutes to take over from Florian Wirtz in that position, and he can play in the midfield three if you want to. And when you want to rest Mo, you can play him on the wing. If you've got a flying fullback outside him to offer the pace, he's got a role within the club, no doubt. But what does the player want? You listen to all his post-match interviews for England, and he's the common theme coming right through all of his post-match interviews is playing time. He needs to go and play. He needs to get his career on the go. His stock and his value is through the roof. I've seen someone saying there 50 million. I was saying that would be my starting base figure for someone like him, because his ceiling is up there with any top English attacking midfielder. He's as good as any of them. So I don't think the club will let him go on the cheap, but I think they'll want to do the best for the player, but also look after the club's interests as well. So I think he'll go, but I don't think he'll go for 50 million. I think it could be potentially a lot more. And there's only a certain amount of clubs that can do that. If he ends up going to a Premier League club, say Aston Villa, down, Bournemouth, those mid-table clubs looking to kick on and looking to push on, a Brighton maybe. He goes to a club
they were sniffing around him.
Yeah, but if he goes to a club like that, then I'd fully expect Richard Hughes to be working something into the contract where either we can potentially bring him back, or a good sell-on, or another that we could look at a player at Brighton that we might be interested in, and a deal can be done. Whether that's for Baleba or Van Hecke maybe, or there are players out there at clubs that we could look at, and Harvey Elliott could be not a make-weight because that's disrespectful, but there are clubs that would be looking at him, and we would be looking at some of these clubs' players and thinking, yeah, we like to look at him. He fits us better for what we need now. And Harvey Elliott can go there and kick on his career at a club that's got ambitions to get into Europe, and he can help him get there. He can he could go to a Brighton or a Bournemouth and be an important player for them. I think he'd thrive on that.
I think Bob Paddock's example, Newcastle actually would be a big stadium, big crowd, European atmospheres, all the sort of things he'd like. And
is he getting in front of Guimaraes and Tonali though?
That's the problem. He could get in with them in a 3 if
Joelinton goes.
If Joelinton goes, yeah.
If Joelinton goes, or I would argue you'd be getting him ahead of their other midfield options that they've got behind.
Yeah, I don't think he's getting in front of Guimaraes and Tonali though.
No,
and it depends on sort of what the role is. Like who's that deep sitting midfielder there?
Tonali, isn't it?
Tonali,
yeah. I also think that if anyone moves on Morgan Gibbs White, I think he could fit in quite well there as well.
Yeah, that's what I think he'd be good at. A side that's either in the Europa League or like a Newcastle who have just got back into the Champions League, who also need who want to add more quality to their squad, and also to their starting line. I think actually somewhere like a Newcastle he'd relish it, and I think he'd do well there.
I think with him,
I'd be interested what David T thinks because he our resident Newcastle fan, he knows better than anyone. If he came to a Newcastle, how would that go down?
Yeah. Emmett makes a point there. Brighton, Bournemouth, Newcastle all play to a style that he would slot into, and absolutely 100% right. I've actually enjoyed watching England in this tournament. A lot of it because of Elliot Anderson. I think he's a phenomenal.
He's a really good tournament.
I think he's a phenomenal player, but also because of Harvey Elliott, because he's been asked to play the false 9. He's been asked to play the second striker. He's got that free role, and he's just involved in everything. And he's constantly dangerous. And you see what the potential is there for him. He's just unfortunate that there are better players at Liverpool right now that are blocking his path at the minute. And it's not any slight on him. It's just the players that are ahead of him at Liverpool currently are that further down the line in their career. You could be looking at Harvey Elliott in 5 years' time and absolutely kicking yourself. How do we let this kid go?
Yeah, it could be. David T said, I'd have him playing in front of Bruno and Tonali in our midfield 3. So, that's one thing to look at. Another player who the talk about him seems to have hotted up a bit more is Darwin Núñez going to Napoli. It's his birthday a couple of days ago. His new haircut. Playing silly eye emojis with Fabrizio Romano. So that seems to be one. I think the talk was Liverpool turned out 70 for him in January. They were hoping for a similar bid in summer, which I don't think's ever going to come. Rumours from the likes of Chris Baskin, people that is probably something closer to the 50 mark is what they're looking for. whether that's 50 with including the add-ons, but that kind of seems to be what we're looking at. I think that'll be a good move for him, don't you, Ash? I think Darwin hasn't worked out as we'd have liked at Liverpool, but he's still a good player, and you could see him doing well at a different club, different environments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
enjoy it.
interested about Napoli. I'm curious the way that he fits with, he's not going to be the main man there. Like Lukaku is still going to be the main man there. I think the club still want like 65 million euro. I think that's their asking price. I don't think they're going to drop away from that. Italian clubs are notoriously, renowned for not paying up big amounts. So I think that's going to be a really interesting negotiation between Hughes and some of his Italian contacts. I expect that to be a pretty good deal. I don't think we're going to let him go for cheap because I do think that the striker market is actually quite limited right now. And despite what our fans kind of feel about Darwin Núñez, and he does miss a hell of a lot of chances, he's not awful. Like, in terms of the grand scheme of strikers, he's not awful. And I think that if you put him in a slower league, maybe with, teams that give him a little bit more time, maybe in a league with maybe not quite as aggressive of a defense and not quite as elite of, a keeper range, I think he's going to do quite well. I wouldn't be surprised if he just absolutely explodes if he does go elsewhere. But you have to recoup a little bit of that money. I don't think it's going to be the fee that we paid for him. But I think that Hughes is going to play hardball there. I really do. I think he's also going to do with Elliott. I don't think Elliott's going to go cheap. If a team is going to get Elliott, I think it's going to be for, a pretty significant chunk of money, unless it's a situation where there's a really great buyback, like you were talking about, involved. So, I expect this part of the sort of Liverpool summer to be actually quite fascinating. And I think that this is going to be more telling, actually, than the ins. I think that what Hughes can get for the outs is actually going to be the most telling about his ability as a director of football.
Yeah, we just had a £2 super chatting from Betty Swallows. That's a great name. Núñez Osherman straight swap. I mean, I'd be all right for that, just to watch the show when we let Kev rip, because Kev's Osherman's biggest fan. So I don't think Osherman. I think they're going to struggle to move Osherman on, because I think the big chance for Osherman is his wages. That seems to be the sticky part. I mean, he will leave Napoli because he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it there, with what's going on social media wise with them and the whole marketing team, which was ridiculous.
He's going to leave Napoli for certain. Look, I'm looking at Napoli's forward options at the minute, and Raspadori is probably their main man. Lukaku's 32 years of age, pushing 33. He's got more miles on his clock than a Morris Minor. And he's about as useful. I think Darwin to Napoli is a no-brainer. I think Napoli will be desperate for him. I also think the fact that they have enjoyed success in buying players from the Premier League, which are not top-end players, but have shown themselves to be elite players in Serie A. The likes of Billy Gilmore, Scott McTominay, Frank Anguissa is there, Philip Billing. I think they'll look at Darwin, and say, we've got a player who can play left forward, right forward, through the middle. He'll thrive there, no doubt in my mind. And as it comes for paying the money, Napoli will pay the 65 million euro. I wouldn't be too worried about that. It's how they structure the deal, and I don't think Liverpool would not have a problem in structuring it in a way to suit Napoli.
Well, they've still got the Kvaratskhelia fee, haven't they? Which was a big fee they got in
75 million. Yeah, 75 million they got for him. So I think there's a deal there to be done, and I think Liverpool will structure the deal in a way to help Napoli get the deal done, because we don't want to have an unhappy player. We don't want to have a player at the top who doesn't want to be there, especially one who has the potential psychopath gene. So it's as well to help him on his way with a gentle push and a thank you very much for some incredible moments. But look, we bought him when he was never a striker when we bought him. We tried to develop him into being a striker. I just don't think he has the composure to be that 9, that clinical 9 that we need. But he's definitely good enough to do absolute bits in Serie A. So yeah. I hope the deal goes through. It'd be a good move for him. It'd be a good move for the club, and the club could focus then on having his replacement tied up soon enough. It'd be interesting to see Osimhen. Osimhen is seriously powerful, seriously good in the air. I just question his motivation in one. The other thing I'd question would be, truly, honestly, is he good enough? Is he good enough in this league? You know, he did okay in Turkey. We didn't you expect a player of his, quality to go to Turkey and absolutely rip the league to shreds. And I don't think he really did that. But at the same time, when he was younger, he was setting the Serie A alight. You know, there's no doubt about that. He's very strong, very good in the air, but he is a central striker. Will he buy into the work rate, the pressing? I think that's the first stat. If you're looking for a number 9, you look at all the potential strikers that we're linked with. I would urge anyone, if you're thinking about what striker Liverpool should go for, get your list of names and then go and check their pressing stats first. Not their goals, not their assists, not their this, that, and look at the pressing stats first. Look for their work rate. Look for their work rate and their pressing stats. That will direct you as to what Arne Slot likes. And that'll give you a good idea as where the club are going to go. That's why I don't think it's going to be Alexander Isak.
Yeah. You don't think it's going to be Alexander Isak?
I don't think Newcastle will sell him. No, I don't think
segue, Kev. We're going to talk about that now. Don't ruby segue. So let's do Isak watch because everyone keeps wanting to talk about him. Lewis Steeler says he thinks there's a 30% chance. Where he's got a percentage from, God only knows.
It's not 29 and 28. It's like that was the one he threw.
I think it's like an under the sofa. Like I'm searching under the sofa cushions and I'm just pulling a number from thin air.
Yeah, it did feel a bit like that. Interestingly, Newcastle are looking to strengthen their side. They've tried to get the Burnley keeper. I think the
Trafford.
James Trafford.
Who'd be very good for them.
And Pedro and Alanga bids have also been turned down as well. So, rightly, Newcastle are looking to move to build their squad. Cards on the table, I just can't see Newcastle wanting to sell. Unless the player really kicks up a stink, and I just don't think he's going to. Because, for all, he could be happy. But, listen, we'd all like him, but I sort of feel like if Liverpool don't get Isak so much, I don't think they will. I think they move on to a different target, and I think that'll be that done. Who that other target is will be an interesting conversation, though, because I don't think it'll be Alvarez, because I don't think Madrid are going to sell him. So, and then all the other striker options that you've seen available all feel a bit projecty, and a bit.
That's
why
That's why I think. That's why I think you have to have a Luis Diaz in your squad. If you go into the season with Gakpo, Diaz, Salah, Wirtz as your 10. I think you have to have 5 forwards. You have Jota. Chiesa's going to go. I think that's where selling Harvey Elliott on that pretext is a bit. You have to have these players you have to have something lined up to come in that we're not seeing or that I'm not seeing. But yeah, that's why I don't see Luis Diaz going. But I also look at what Newcastle have at the minute. They need to add depth, 100%. They've lost the likes of Callum Wilson and the young Paraguayan. He's not young anymore, but the other Paraguayan kid that they had. They've got a young potential striker coming through, but they definitely need to add a couple of forward players into their squad anyway. Trafford seems an ideal signing because I think he's probably could develop to be better than Nick Pope. So I just don't know what Liverpool are going to do. Genuinely, I don't know what we're going to do.
That's the exciting bit, but don't know what we're doing in quite an exciting way because you've seen already Liverpool are very serious this summer. So you kind of at that point of going, well, let's just see what
they could do. Anything. They absolutely.
I think everyone is waiting for a domino to fall in the striker market.
Yeah,
I mean,
because the prices that we're talking about they're just insane. You're seeing, different players getting priced out of moves. You're seeing players that you thought would have surely gone by now, like a Sesko to Arsenal. I thought that would have been done. The fact that they're signing center backs and additional midfielders in Norgard and things like that.
We still don't know if it's Sesko because it might be Gyökeres still.
Exactly.
They don't seem to have settled on a striker either.
They don't. Again, it seems like it's sort of like a flip of a coin at this point.
Yeah.
But I think that we're waiting for that coin to settle, and it's like, what is that price? Because I don't think it's going to be that £100 million mark that a lot of people are kind of circulating around. I mean, for Isaac, that's different, or Isaac, however you want to pronounce it. That's different. He's an elite striker, and there's not that many on the market. But if you're talking, I actually think that Liverpool will probably look at Ekitike. I think that in terms of what's available on the market, in terms of, technical ability and sort of what he brings off of the ball beyond just being a pure target man, I think he makes the most sense, but not at 100 million. I think that if you drop that down to like 60, that makes more sense. And then you can mold him into something that Slot can really work with. And I understand that a lot of people are going to say, we don't want a project. The rest of the team is kind of ready for that Isaac player. But that might not be feasible. If you're talking enormous money, I mean, we can offer bigger wages than Newcastle can, 100%. I think the most they're doing is like 150, maybe ish.
There is a PSR thing with Newcastle, not in terms of they haven't got money to spend, they have, but I think I've read one of the local journalists has put something out and said there is a PSR in terms of there's a certain cap of wages they can offer, because if they offer over that, they're then in a breach again. I mean, Newcastle could have actually got themselves in a little bit of hot water where you're saying to a player, we value at £180 million player. He could, if he's got a good agent, the good agent's going saying, I want this contract improved. And that's why, well, you're not paying me like £180 million player. So I agree with Megan McCallum, though, which is, I'm not saying this happened. If Newcastle did sell an Isaac, that could be their Coutinho move. Whereas Liverpool sold a Coutinho, used it to, build quality elsewhere.
I've heard that said before,
but it's who they bring in, because otherwise it could also be a Tottenham Gareth Bale situation where they bring in loads of lads and it doesn't work. So it is a flip of a coin whether it works or not.
Yeah, I've heard that before with Coutinho, but you got to remember, when we sold Coutinho, that was absolutely obscene money, and a £30 million player when we sold Coutinho is a £55-60 million player in today's market. It's almost like it doesn't stretch as far as what it used to, and that's the thing. There's not many clubs. I think we're probably still one of the few clubs out there who can turn around and go to Newcastle. Okay, bang, there you go, we'll take it. There's not many other clubs out there that can do that. Who need a striker? I doubt very much Arsenal can. I doubt very much Arsenal could go and outbid us for Alexander Isak. I'd be very surprised. And I don't think any club in the continent. You look at PSG, don't really need him. They're not going down that model. Madrid don't need him. They won't go down that model. And there's nobody else. So if Newcastle do decide, okay, the player wants to go, we need to cash in, there's a very, very limited number of clubs who can do that deal. So that kind of puts us in a really strong position to be able to negotiate it.
It just depends on what their long-term vision is, because they are significantly weaker without him. So, I think with Coutinho, we had a plan where we could kind of absorb the impact of him leaving. I know a lot of us didn't feel that way. A lot of us were like, oh my God, we're losing this creative fulcrum. But in reality, when he left, we did redistribute the creativity elsewhere, and we saw the rise of Trent and other players. I don't think that at the moment Newcastle has the ability to absorb the loss of Isak. I just don't. And I don't think that João Pedro does that if they get him in. They're looking desperately for a right winger at this point in time. They need goals, and they don't. that's not something that you can just absorb. I do think that we are unique in that we can take Isak on for a fee. And I think it just depends on what Isak wants. They've been in the Champions League before, and they've sort of, dabbled and then immediately dropped out because they're just not quite ready as a squad. And I think they're sort of in the same position this year. It's like, yeah, they're in Champions League and that's great and they'll get the money for that, but are they competitive? I don't know. Maybe Davey can kind of enlighten us a little bit more if he feels like they're competitive. But I do think that at his age, Isak probably wants to go on and compete for the biggest titles there. And I'm not 100% sure that Newcastle is set up in a way that they will be able to do that. So if he agitates for a move, I think that this is really on the table. If he doesn't, I think it's sort of a pipe dream.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. I think it's got to take a bit of a turn of the player saying, I want to go. But again, we'll do that. In terms of, before we go, the rest of the market, in terms of other clubs, Arsenal have brought a couple in. They've brought the lad in from Brighton, which seems to have gone down, Kev, a bit mixed, judging by Arsenal fans. Some think it's smart business. Some think it's why you're buying an older player.
From Brentford.
Norgard, yeah.
Well, look, at the minute, Arsenal have lost Jorginho, Tierney, Sterling, Neto, Nuno Tavares, Marquinhos gone as well.
And Partey might be going.
Might be going. Look, I think for £16 million, it looks like they're going to bring in Ariza Balaga as a backup keeper and Norgard, who's going to be like, your six if you want to use him in certain games. And he's 31 years of age, knows the league inside out. Very similar kind of a deal to what they did when they signed Jorginho at the time. Come in, do a job, fine. That's a steady. They're steady Eddie kind of deals. Apparently, they're looking at a 20-year-old centre back from Valencia.
He loves a defender, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, this kid is I don't know. His name escapes me. I only seen it on Sky Sports News tonight. Right-sided centre back, so he would be a backup to Saliba.
You're talking about Mosquera?
That's it. Yeah, highly rated. Was at Spain. We played for.
Yeah, he's a Spanish defender.
Yeah, Spain right the way through the youth ranks. Played for him at the Olympics as well. Highly regarded. Could be
20 years old.
Yeah, could be a good bit of business and could be a bit of future proofing, but it doesn't mask the two areas of the pitch that they desperately need to do. And maybe it's a case that they're having to wait until July 1st ticks over before they press the button on a striker. But it looks like, they're looking at two or three. They're going to get one of them. And I think that deal that they do for that one sets the market price for the others. John makes the point there. Ekitike is another Darwin. Sorry, not ready for Liverpool. Well, the difference is Ekitike is a striker. Darwin was a winger that we tried to convert into a striker. At the end of the day, Ekitike, whatever people, and I'm not a fan of him at the price that they're commanding, not anywhere near the slightest, but he is a striker, and he is a physical striker. He's a big, tall unit of a kid that has got potential. You couldn't go into him this next season coming as your main man. I think you have to have Jota in the squad. You have to have Luis Diaz in the squad who can shoulder the weight. But at a price, I think that he could be anything.
I mean, not to be too disparaged about our current number nines, but Jota and Nunes between them last year didn't get double figures in the league. So it's a. I'm also a bit like, it wouldn't take an elite striker to sort of even get that aggregate a bit higher, Ash, to even
for us.
For us,
yeah, I agree.
So maybe that's the one area maybe you could if you can't get the elite one, you go for what you think will be the next big thing, because you're going, they'll have time to settle, and if it doesn't work, we've got Diaz, we've got Jota, we've got Gakpo, we've got Salah, all we know can get goals for us, and then you've still got more creatives behind us in Wirtz and Kerkez and Frimpong and Bradley.
Looks like Burnley have been busy.
Burnley's
Burnley
team are the best.
But Burnley after bringing in Marcus Edwards from Sporting Lisbon, really, really like him as a winger. He was a young kid who was at Tottenham and he went to Sporting, and I thought he was. I think he's done really well at Sporting, and he's found his way back to England into the Premier League. Axel Tuanzebe, going there from Ipswich. He's 27 now. Axel Tuanzebe. He's 27.
I still thought he was 22.
Yeah, he's 27. He's one of the, he's going to be when I look at him and all I remember him is that he's the next one coming through the ranks of Manchester United, and then all of a sudden he's 27 going to Burnley. It's weird. But they brought in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They brought in 7 players. Max Weiss is the goalkeeper they brought in because it looks like Trafford is going. But Max Weiss from Karlsruhe, I think he's the German under-21 goalkeeper. So, and I think they paid something like $4.5 million for him, something like that. Chelsea a bit busy, but you expect them because they were like Man City, done their business early kind of thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, there isn't really a massive amount of deals done. I mean, we know the City ones: Nuri, Bettinelli, Cherki, and Reinders. Cunha at Manchester United.
Looks like Mbeumo is getting closer there.
Yeah, that'll show.
I think that'll happen. I think they're going to offer the wages that he wants, which is something other teams just can't do. Which is, it's just typical Man United behavior. Yeah. Which isn't to say that he's not a fantastic player. And I think maybe for Manchester United, that is sort of the best of what they can get in this window. But I don't think that they're setting themselves up for future success with that kind of a deal.
Well, Spurs have confirmed Kevin Danzo deal that was
from January.
Yeah, but from January brought forward, and Matthias Tell looks like that's done. He's going to be staying there on a permanent. Timo Werner gone. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg gone to Marseille. West Ham have brought somebody, Jean-Claire Todibo from Nice on a permanent deal.
I love these last minute end of show updates from you, Kev.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm literally just looking through
up into the air at the end.
Yeah, I'm just looking through the list here. Hugo Bueno into the loan from Feyenoord. Yeah, look, the window hasn't kicked off. There's still 66 days left to go in this transfer window. Long time. Lots can happen. So,
and the first friendly for Liverpool is in just over 2 weeks.
Which is wild. That's crazy.
That feels like that's going on really quick. So, a couple of things before we go. One is a bit of women's football update. Obviously, women's show will be back next season. Good news is Kerry Holland has signed a new contract, which is good for them because we could do keeping quality players like her. And then before we go, Adam Lallana announced his retirement from football this week. So I probably should have prepped you two for this, but I haven't. What were your favourite Adam Lallana moments? I'll go with Norwich 5. Yeah. Sorry, Liverpool 5, Norwich 4. That last minute goal where Klopp got his glasses broke. The most mental early Klopp game ever. But actually, he was the start of the press, wasn't he? He was the start of the way Liverpool wanted to go forward. And Klopp putting him in centre mid was perfect.
Yeah, I think he just sort of epitomized that energy in the midfield that he was looking for. And he had, his fair share of injuries and things like that. That Norwich game is really kind of the thing that's going to stand out for everybody. But I think with him, he was at an age where where Klopp came in. I just combined the two of those and called them slop, and that was awful. But he was at an age where Klopp came in, and he was sort of like the tone setter. He was the Henderson before Henderson sort of arrived, and he just really kind of paved the way for all of those midfielders. And a Klopp midfield is tough. It's a lot of water carriers. It's a lot of hard workers, not necessarily a lot of glory for them. And I think Lallana was the one that really typified that. And he really kind of set the tone for that hard work mentality. And he wasn't always the one that got the spotlight. A lot of times he was doing a lot of the doggy work in the background, but he never complained. He was just a perfect professional, which is what you want. And it sort of is what we have seen kind of come into the club ever since, where those are the kinds of players that we're looking for. We're looking for professional, hardworking players that really want to be here. And we're seeing that in a player like Kerkez, kind of just to bring this conversation full circle back to who we started with, where you're talking about people that are really like, I just want to give 100%. I want to work really hard. I'm in this club because I love it. And I want to do it. And that's sort of what Lallana personified for me.
What about you, Kev, before we go?
Loved everything about him as a player. All heart, loads of skill. Best player to come. He come out of Southampton, but I remember when he started his career at Southampton, Letizia had not long packed up. He was still fresh in the memory, and along come this young kid who just like very similar to Joe Cole, the way Joe Cole played football. Talented. Played that 10 role, loved the cheeky dribble, quick feet,
Cruyff turn.
lovely eye for a pass and a turn on a sixpence, and could get a goal. I honestly felt that he would stay his entire career at Southampton. It just felt like that for me. But when we went in for him and we got him, I was delighted because he was just the type of footballer that I love watching. That's why I'm kind of excited for Florian Wirtz. Can't wait to watch him in a red shirt. I love watching silky smooth, graceful footballers, and he's that. He was that, and he had the relentlessness in pressing and attitude, and he was combination. He was an all-around good footballer, but had a great mentality about him as well, and it rubbed off. It was infectious. I just think that what happened to him was very telling about what was going to happen to a few others along the line. The longer you stay in a Jurgen Klopp midfield, the higher risk you have of your body giving up on you because of the relentlessness of it, especially at the start. Jurgen Klopp toned it right down towards the end and started managing games a lot better. But at the start, it was crazy. And we all loved it and all that. But footballers aren't machines. It was like driving, 3 cars in the midfield and the oil light coming on, and you're just revving the living daylights out of it to get that last ounce out of it. And that's what it felt like watching Lallana. He tried everything, but his body just couldn't do it. And he never really recovered. He moved on to Brighton and back to Southampton. And he's going to be on the coaching staff at Southampton now as well. So
I'm looking forward to that. I think he's going to be a really, really good coach.
Yeah.
He was caretaker manager. Wasn't he caretaker player manager at Brighton for a little bit after Potter left?
I think he was involved in it. Yeah, he was involved
definitely.
In it. Yeah.
He looks like someone who's been earmarked to go and do well in.
Very kind of like Scott Parker. Do you know what I mean? Do you
Yes.
remember Scott Parker that when he was a player, Scott Parker as the player was like he was very good. He wasn't elite, but he was a very good player. But now you're looking at him as a young manager developing his managerial career, and I think Adam Lallana could be that. I think he could go on to be a very good manager.
He's got the brain for it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think, if Adam Lallana was 10, maybe 15 years younger, I bet Slot would love him. I really do. I think that he'd be a perfect slot player just because he's so technical and so intelligent. And I think that's what you're seeing with what Slot's bringing in. But I really look forward to kind of seeing him where his career trajectory is going to take him, because he's such a good guy all around. And I think that's what I was getting for in terms of like tone setting and things like that. He did it for us and for Klopp. I bet he could do it for any team going forward that he's maybe a coach of.
Yeah, one of my favorite pictures is Lallana holding up the Premier League trophy. Because of all of the work that he did, and that season he wasn't really involved, but he was a big part of how we got there. So
he was never like the guy that was the answer. Like when Mo Salah went off in the Champions League, like he wasn't going to be the guy that was going to fill that void, but he tried.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about that for me at that point in time. It was about the fact that he was just such a pivotal kind of pillar of what was going on in the back room.
But he's got that Premier League winners medal.
Yes, and he deserves it.
And he absolutely deserved it.
And his Champions League winners medal as well. He's got 2.
Oh yeah.
So listen, before we go.
And Nat Phillips.
Oh, we got 3 million. We got 3 million for him.
Mad shit.
You know what? That might be Hughes' most successful sale of the whole summer. Actually getting him off the books for a profit to a team that he really wants to play for. Yeah. You know, I know that we had that offer from Trabzonspor last summer for more, but I think the fact that I mean, have you ever seen a more West Brom player? Like, he's perfect. He's perfect for them. And I think he's going to be happy going there. He wants to stay in England. I think it's a great move all around. And you know, we can always have that Cruyff turn to remember him.
Oh, since in
the San Siro is fantastic. Yeah.
Bless him. So before we go, don't forget to like, subscribe. You know, join our Patreon.
Do you guys in the Patreon chat or just in general, would you like sort of like a deeper dive in like a Kerkez tactical dive, or you know, any of the players that we've signed, really? Because that's something that I'm kind of looking forward to, that I would like to do. But I don't know if that's something that you guys would like. So if you'd like it, throw it in the chat or in the comments. In the comments afterwards, because I'd kind of want to go into him a little bit more about like what he might bring and sort of like the nitty gritty data.
Yeah. So that's what I look forward. That's what I look forward to, because on Patreon we've got more functionality where we can do a bit more graphics, a bit more video, things we can't do on YouTube. So, and also you get to join the Telegram group, which is a great laugh. So, you know, we all have fun in it. So, but listen, hit the bell notification, you know, because I'm sure there'll be more shows coming now. And look, we've got things planned for the summer, you know, to get us through the summer break before. I mean, the footy starts in about 6 weeks, doesn't it? Something crazy like that.
You said it was just weeks away until what is it, Preston?
Preston is just over 2 weeks away.
I am so excited to see these guys actually play football. And I know that there's going to be a lot of fitting together, but I want to see what Slot's going to do with them. I want to see where like Verts is going to play.
Yeah, I wish I tried to get a ticket now. I'm very jealous whoever gets tickets to that. So listen, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Kev. And listen, take care. We'll see you all very soon. But listen, we've signed Kerkez, we've signed Frimpong, we've signed Verts, and we're going to sign a few more. So listen, enjoy it. Not long till the season starts. Till then, see you later. Bye-bye.